this for about an inch. You're gonna have it connect. Imagine this connects straight to it like this, and this is the canister here. And initially you're actually gonna have it pointing to the outside. So once you have all this set up, and this is before you do anything else, I just get this pre-set up so it's easy to put on the vapor pin. The canister's here, and then this is usually about a good length, because this is going to need to go outside of the shroud. So after all that, obviously collect any indoor air and ambient air samples before you start drilling. And you choose the spot that's been cleared. You drill, who's drilled at all, period, for the soil slab? So you know how once you get through the concrete, you'll feel like a little jump. When you're drilling, you know, it's like drilling through concrete, you're going slowly, and then eventually you'll feel kind of like a little drop, and it'll go a lot quicker. That's when you hit substrate, and as soon as you feel that drop, you maybe want to go at most an inch, just to make sure you're in the substrate, and then pull up. Once you pull up, you should be able to see, you know, it should be like gray colored for most of these houses, obviously poured concrete, slabs, stuff like that. But once you pull it up, you should see some sort of brown or black sort of soil material. Once that happens, you grab a vapor pen, you put a sleeve on it, and the easiest way to put the sleeve on is to use this, which is in all vapor kits, or vapor pen kits. Screw it in somewhat, put it on from the bottom.
The beast.
And you want to make sure that all 4 little rungs are covered. If you don't, the sleeve is going to come up in a weird way. Like so. That way all 4 of these little rungs are covered. It's above this. So when you put it in the hole, and the drill bits I use I think are 5/8 of an inch. Yeah, 5/8. You're going to put this on top of the hole that you just drilled. There's this little hole here. Put that there. You take the hammer. You should hammer it down until pretty much the sleeve will start to push up and bubble out a little bit. So pretty much about maybe a millimeter or 2 before this gets even with the substrate, it's going to bubble up. Now you don't want it to bubble up and then eventually cover these threads, because that's going to ruin the seal. You want just to bubble out a little bit in the sleeve. So once that's done, you put one of these caps on it. Let it build for a second while you go get your stuff. Obviously, whenever I have to mention, take pictures of the spot before you drill. Once the vapor pen's intact, one of you sampling, and one after you've repaired it. After that, you're going to go grab a PID, and still is the only thing you have here, is this. Then, once that's done, you grab the PID. As soon as you pop that off, stick the PID in, you take an initial reading. After that, you can pop on your system. Now remember that, actually might as well just do this. So at that point, you can pop on the canister. You're going to put this on here. And you're going to put the shroud over top of it. Usually you put it right through there. And that way it's sitting on top. You've got this pointing out. Make sure it's pointing out, because if it's pointing in, that's already going to start sucking soil vapor. So the biggest thing to make sure is that this is pointing out when you first attach it. After that, you're going to put your helium detector in the hole. I guess we put it in this side. All right. So you're turning your helium detector on. Zero it before you do anything else. Then you're going to put your helium detector in here, and you're going to put a tube. I guess we don't have it. Just imagine this is the tubing for the tank from the, actually what am I doing? Regulators right there. We have a thicker one that we usually use. I don't know where it is. But this is on the tank, and it goes in here. And for those of my regulars work, make sure it's all the way out first, then slowly crank it in. And while you're doing that, you're having the helium detector here. This is still open. What you do is you want to run it until the helium detector gets above 10% but below 20. So you just kind of like let it slowly leak in, check the helium detector, watch as it slowly builds up. You know, it'll get pretty quickly to about 5–10%, and then you want to slow it down a little bit. I usually like to get it up to about 18, so that gives me plenty of time for it to kind of trickle down. After that, you take this out, with the helium detector, go back to 0, and you stick the helium detector needle in here. And what this is doing is checking to see if there's any leaks in the train for helium, which implies you don't have a full connection. I've never had one fail. So it's usually unlikely with the equipment we have that there's going to be a fail, but you still do it, obviously, because it's one, regulation, two, it's just good practice. After you check the helium detector, as long as it's below, technically the regulations are 10% below what the value is in here, so if it was 20%, you could have to 2% helium. But in general, I get less than 200 parts per million, which is not even like a tenth of a percent.
Do you do a clay seal?
No. That's what the seal is for that sleeve around the vapor pen.
Around anything?
Nope. Everything, that's what the metal ferrules and this tubing does, is it pinches it all shut. We've never had you've seen, we don't think we've ever had much of a helium detection in any of the samples. So after you do that, if it passes the helium check, you note it, there's a time for helium check, pass, or start and pass. After that, you put the helium detector back in here, make sure it's still above 10. I usually just like to keep it above 15. If it starts to trickle down a little bit, I'll just give it a little burst. After that, you attach, using silicone, this guy, and silicone to this guy. So make sure that there's a silicone piece here and a silicone piece here. And what this does is, in theory, complete the sampling train so it's a completely closed system. And you turn the on switch, and the off switch to this. What you do is, based on the length of tubing that we've done, I've simplified the math, and you're supposed to pull, I think it's like 2 times the volume in there. Which the simple way to do that is you pull this slowly. Should take you about 15 seconds or so from start to finish. You do that once. Once you pull it full, you switch the off to here, pump it into the V-Ray bag. You repeat second time. And then you switch the off here, and it's going to stay off for the duration of the sampling. You push this back into the V-Ray bag, take off the V-Ray bag quick, take a second PID reading from the V-Ray bag. You write that down.
That's your leak check.
No, you're just doing the PID reading there. We're not checking for helium. That's what the initial check was for. So after that, you put the helium bag back on. In theory, it should be a complete train. And it's off here. The silicone's joining this. So at that point, you go in. You're trying to maintain 20% helium. So when you do this, you're going to lose a little bit. Be prepared to maybe put a little burst in. You're going to go to the gauge. You're going to hit on. If it's not zeroed, a lot of times it'll be like 0.2 or negative 0.3 or some sort of value not close to 0. You're going to hold 0. You're going to switch this valve over. So it's facing towards the system, the canister, and then you're going to open the canister. And you're going to let it down. And then you just let it run. It usually takes about 5 minutes. You want it to get below negative 5 is what they say, but we want it as close to like below -2 to 0 as possible. And this whole time it's only pulling from the vapor itself, from the subslab soil vapor. And once it gets close to 0, Make sure it's 20% or above 10% the whole time that it's sampling. You go in, you seal it, you should be good. Take this off, push this out, and then you get your PID ready because this is still a closed system. And once you pull it out, you take your final PID reading. And then you dismantle this, you take all this apart. We throw away all the tubing and the metal ferrules, but this stuff, like these kind of things, the vapor pens, we decon. The sleeves get thrown away, the caps you can handle either way you want. They don't get particularly contaminated. I know some people in Somerset threw them away, some people deconned them. I don't think there's much of a difference either way. It doesn't really affect the sample that we take. And then after that, you use this, because this is going to be firmly in the ground, obviously create a seal. So since this is in the ground, you're going to wrap it around, and you're just going to pull it right out. Then you're just going to have hold your substrate. You're going to have concrete patch, which I assume we have somewhere in here, but it's not necessary. You just make sure that it's full and smooth over it. Generally, with the patch that we have, you want to wait to come back in a minute or two. Like, go around, take pictures, finish up your notes, come back, make sure it didn't like bubble down a little bit, smooth it back over again. Take a picture. Should be at